You tie the final knot on the bandage. The golden retriever thumps his tail against the steel table, and despite the ache in your shoulders, you smile. You hand Mrs. Higgins the leash. She thanks you for staying late, presses a check into your palm, and disappears into the rain with her dog trotting happily beside her. You lock the front door. You flip the sign to closed. 12 hours on your feet, and your body feels every minute of it. A fist slams against the glass. You look up. A man stands at your door, soaked to the bone, shivering, eyes too wide, too white around the edges. He isn't holding a leash, he's holding a friend. The friend hangs limp over his shoulder, one arm swinging loose, the other hand pressed against his own stomach, clutching a towel that used to be white. It isn't white anymore. It's dripping. Onto the sidewalk, into the gutter, mixing with the rain in thin pink ribbons. You shake your head. You point down the street toward the hospital. 4 blocks. They have real doctors there. You're a vet. They have real equipment, real medicine, real everything you don't. The man doesn't move his head. He reaches into his jacket instead, and the pistol he pulls out taps once against your glass door like a knuckle. Calm, almost polite. You unlock the door. They stumble inside, and your quiet clinic stops being quiet. Mud streaks the tile. Water pools by the entrance, and blood. Blood tracking a dark, glistening trail from the doorway to the exam table. The gunman kicks the door shut behind him while you help haul the dying man onto the table. A bullet wound. You can see it now, ragged and wet, just below the ribs. You tell him. You fix broken paws. You give rabies shots. You pull ticks off retrievers and tell old women their cats need to drop a few pounds. You don't do this. You've never done this. The gunman doesn't blink. Fix him. That's all he says. 2 words, flat and final, but you hear everything underneath them. Fix him or join him. You look at the wound. Then you look at your cabinets. Rows of bottles meant for animals. Tools sized for paws and tails. Nothing built for a man bleeding out under fluorescent light. You don't have the training. You don't have the equipment. You don't have a choice. You grab a tranquilizer meant for horses, strong enough to drop a 1,000-pound animal in half a minute. Your hands shake as you do the math, converting horse to man, praying the decimal point lands somewhere safe, praying you don't stop his heart before you've had the chance to save it. You push the plunger. The man groans. His eyes roll back, white and unseeing, and his body sinks into the table like something deflating. He's under. You have maybe 20 minutes before he isn't. You move fast, faster than you've ever moved. You clean the wound, find the bleeder, and close it with heavy blue nylon, the same thread you use on Great Danes and German Shepherds, never on something that talks back. It will leave a scar like a lightning bolt, but it will leave a man alive. The gunman never sits, never speaks. He just watches, arms crossed, eyes tracking every motion of your hands like he's grading you. When you tie off the final stitch, he finally steps forward. He pulls a thick envelope from his jacket and drops it onto the patient's chest, where it rises and falls with each shallow breath. Keep your mouth shut. Buy yourself something nice. He hauls his friend off the table and out the back door, and you don't help. You can't. You just stand there, hands trembling, watching 2 shapes dissolve into the dark of the alley. The door swings shut. Silence rushes back in. You pick up the envelope. You count it twice because the first count doesn't feel real. $5,000. Cash. You think about calling the police, showing them the blood still tacky on your floor, the money still warm in your hands, letting someone else carry the weight of tonight. But the clinic's been bleeding money for months. The rent's late. You're trying to scrape together your daughter's tuition, and every month the gap gets a little wider, a little harder to climb out of. And that man's eyes, calm, patient, remembering, tell you that calling anyone would be its own kind of mistake. You mop the floor. You burn the rags in a coffee can out back. You bury the envelope behind the tax returns nobody ever opens. Just this once, you tell yourself. You almost believe it. 3 nights later, the phone rings at 2 in the morning. You're half asleep on the couch, some black and white movie murmuring to itself on the TV. The number isn't one you recognize. The vet who works late. I heard you do good work. You don't answer. You don't breathe. A friend of mine needs help. Same as before. Double the pay. You should hang up. You should already be dialing 911, telling them about the man with the gun, the envelope in your cabinet, all of it. Instead, you think about your daughter's tuition bill sitting on the kitchen counter, the red past due stamp glaring up at you every time you walk past. You give them the address. The second patient is a woman, bleeding from somewhere you don't ask too many questions about. You clean it. You close it. 47 stitches, neat as a hem, careful as prayer. When you finish, her partner presses an envelope into your hand without a word. $10,000. You don't count it until they're gone. You start leaving the back door unlocked on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You don't know how word travels in a world like this, but it does. Quiet, fast, and untraceable, like smoke under a door. A man with a shattered kneecap shows up on a Tuesday. You splint it the way you'd splint a Bernese mountain dog's leg. Tight, careful, 6 weeks off it or it won't set right. A woman with burns webbing both palms comes on a Thursday. Grab something hot, she says, and you don't ask what. You wrap her hands in gauze and hand her antibiotics meant for chickens, and she thanks you like you've given her a gift. They all pay cash. They all vanish through the back door before sunrise. They know better than to ask your name. You know better than to ask theirs. And here's the thing that lets you sleep some nights. Most of them aren't monsters. Every so often someone walks in with eyes too cold and hands too steady. The kind of person whose wounds tell stories you'd rather not hear. But mostly you're patching up people the system simply forgot. A construction worker with no insurance and a 40-foot fall. A mother who burned her hand on a stove and can't afford to miss a shift to find out if it's serious. Regular people, regular wounds. No way to pay for anything regular. You're doing good work. That's what you tell yourself anyway. Every time you lock the back door behind another stranger. You buy sharper instruments, brighter lights. You tell your ex-wife the clinic's finally turning a corner, and she just nods, relieved, asking nothing more. You put a deposit down on your daughter's first semester and feel, for one evening, like a good father again. 3 months pass. You've made more in that stretch than the last 2 years combined. The filing cabinet's full. You start hiding envelopes behind the water heater too, just to have somewhere left to put them. You start to feel good at this. Not proud, never quite proud, but capable, needed in a way the clinic never made you feel. Like you finally found the thing you were built for. That feeling is the first mistake. It's a Thursday. You finish stitching a dislocated shoulder around 2 a.m. An easy one. Pop and wrap. Hand over the painkillers, take the cash. You walk your patient to the back door, watch him melt into the dark, and lock up behind him. You grab your keys. You head for your car in the back lot. You see the van too late. Black, parked at an angle in the far corner, doors already sliding open before you can react. 2 men step out. Big, silent, moving with the unhurried confidence of people who've done this more times than you've had patience. A bag drops over your head before you can even raise your hands. Everything goes black, literally and otherwise. They throw you into the van. The drive feels longer than it probably is. When it stops, hands pull you out, walk you through a door, and the smell hits you immediately. Antiseptic, sterile, clinical, in a way your own clinic never quite manages. A real hospital smell. Wrong smell. Wrong place. They push you into a chair. You don't move. You don't trust your legs yet. The bag comes off. You're in a room with glass walls. On the other side, equipment gleams under bright surgical light. Machines that cost more than your entire practice. An operating table sits in the center, and on it, a body. A man in a suit stands in front of you. You're the vet, he says. Not a question. He turns, points through the glass. That man needs help. You look at the figure on the table, and your stomach drops somewhere past your shoes. You recognize him. Everyone in this city does, whether they want to or not. He's the man who owns the docks. The man who owns half the police force on this side of the river. The man whose name people stop saying out loud once the sun goes down. The crime lord. And he looks like he's dying. You shake your head. You explain, slowly, carefully, like you're talking someone down off a ledge, that you fix dogs and cats and the occasional stranger who can't walk into an ER. This is different. This is past you, beyond anything you have the right to attempt. The suit doesn't blink. You've kept people alive for 3 months, he says, with horse tranquilizers and fishing line in a clinic built for poodles. He steps closer, close enough that you can smell his cologne under the antiseptic. This is just one more mammal. You tell him it's different. You tell him this man needs a real surgeon, a real hospital, someone with a medical degree and a residency and a license that isn't a joke. Hospitals ask questions, you say. They file reports. Hospitals ask questions, the suit agrees. We don't like questions. A guard steps forward. You hadn't even registered him until now, just part of the wallpaper until his hand settled on the gun at his hip. Mammals are mammals. Now, begin. You scrub your hands at a sink that's nicer than anything in your clinic. A woman in scrubs appears at your elbow, silent, already laying out instruments. You step through the glass door. The crime lord's vitals blink across a monitor, and you read them the way you'd read a dog hit by a car, a cat that fell 4 stories. Internal bleeding. You've seen this exact shape of dying before, just never wearing a $3,000 suit. You look back through the glass. I need to operate. Now. The suit nods once. The woman hands you a scalpel. Your hand hovers over the man's stomach, and for one suspended second, you don't move. This man has ruined lives. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. Businesses burned to ash over unpaid debts, families scattered, or worse. People who crossed him simply stopped existing, the way a word disappears mid-sentence. You could let him die right here. A hesitation. A complication nobody could ever prove wasn't real. Then you think of your daughter's laugh. The way she still hugs you too tight when you pick her up, like letting go costs her something. You begin. The next 2 hours blur into something outside of time. You move faster than you've ever moved. The woman beside you is good, better than good. She reads your hands before you finish the thought, adjusts the lights a breath before you need them adjusted. You wonder, somewhere in the back of your mind, how many times she's stood exactly where she's standing now. Whether she chose this, or whether this chose her the same way it chose you. Another hour bleeds by. Your spine aches. Your legs have gone numb below the knee. Sweat stings your eyes, but your hands are steadier than they've ever been in your life. You tie the final knot. The crime lord is alive. You stand there afterward, gloves still on, and feel nothing. Not pride, not relief, just a hollow, scraped-out quiet, like something in you stayed behind on that table. You strip off your gloves, drop them in the bin, and ask for a ride home. You want your bed. You want your daughter. You want this entire night erased from existence. The suit doesn't move. Soon, he says. He presses a button on the wall. The glass around you frosts white, swallowing the world outside whole. You spin toward the door. Sealed. You push. Nothing. You slam your fists against the glass. Still nothing. You turn, heart slamming against your ribs, and find the crime lord's eyes open, watching you the way a cat watches something smaller, something that hasn't realized yet that it's already caught. You saved my life, he whispers, voice thin as paper. You nod, fast, desperate. You tell him you did what they asked. Now you need to go. You have a family, a daughter who needs her father, at recitals, at graduations, at every ordinary Tuesday in between. He shakes his head, slow, almost fond. A gift like yours? Wasted on house pets. He points to the far corner of the room. You follow his hand and see, for the first time, a bed, neatly made, hospital corners, and a small desk, a lamp, a stack of medical textbooks thick enough to stop a bullet. I've been looking for someone like you, he says, calm under pressure, asks no questions, works with what they have. No. Your voice cracks on the single syllable. You tell him you have a life out there, a practice, a daughter who needs her father at every single moment that will ever matter. She'll be taken care of, he says, gentle as a verdict. Best schools, a beautiful home. She'll have everything she could ever need. A pause. She won't even notice you're gone. You lunge for the door, press your palms flat against the glass. It's cold enough to burn. Nobody comes. The suit's voice fills the room from somewhere you can't locate. Get some rest. You start early tomorrow. You stare at the made-up bed in the corner, at the sealed door, at the man you just dragged back from the edge of death with your own 2 hands. You think about that first night, the fist on the glass, the gun tapping politely against the door, the envelope landing on a stranger's chest. You thought you were making a choice back then. You thought you were the one in control. You spent your whole life saving animals. Now you've become one.